Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Construct Innovate webinar series in association with Engineers Ireland. My name is Jamie Goggins, and I'm Director of Construct Innovate. So for those of you who don't know who Construct Innovate are, we're Ireland's National Research Centre for Construction, Technology and Innovation. So this webinar series is all around sustainability planning in construction, and this is week one of the series. So we're going to have 7 different talks. So this week is all around how your company can support sustainable development goals. Next week will be around carbon footprinting. Then we move into passive house design, and then why we monitor buildings for their performance and lessons learned from that. We'll have a week around retrofitting buildings, both homes and commercial buildings. Then we'll move into the circular economy. And finally finish off with heritage, culture, community and sustainability. So those of us that work in the built environment and construction sector, we know there's a massive changes happening at the moment in there. So in terms of, for example, climate resilient economy in there. So climate action continues to be a key driver for the construction sector, and it's going to determine for the foreseeable, or it's going to be for the foreseeable future in Ireland and internationally. So effectively in the construction sector, we cannot keep building like we're currently building, otherwise we won't be able to achieve the challenging CO2 or the greenhouse gas reduction targets that are there for Ireland and across Europe. That creates obviously huge opportunities for us and those that work in the construction sector or the engineering sector in there, because we have to retrofit buildings at scale. We have to find new and improved ways that we're going to build the infrastructure and our buildings, both from a sustainability point of view, and also from a resource point of view, because we also are in a now economy where we have almost 100% employment within Ireland, and trying to actually build more with less in there. So in other words, be more efficient in how we build, and that requires less people in there. So this webinar series explores sustainable construction processes and products and aligns with the various sustainable development goals. But first, we're going to actually learn a bit more about what the Sustainable Development Goals are, how you can align your company's main efforts or actions within them. And we're going to do that through a series of talks here. So first up is going to be Richard Manton. So Dr. Richard Manton is the Director of Sustainability at the University of Galway. And he's going to introduce us to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and how you can embed those within an organization. So for example, in the University of Galway, has committed to aligning all major efforts with the Sustainable Development Goals, targets and indicators. And that's a massive statement from the university in terms of all major efforts, whether it's teaching, research, operations or outreach activities. Then we have Chrystal, who's the Head of Sustainable Design from DRES, and he's going to show how the SDGs are a driver to DRES's sustainability strategy. And then we have Tom Lindsay, who's the SDG specialist with ACT, and he's going to give talk about accelerating action for the Sustainable Development Goals. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker. So our first speaker, Dr. Richard Manton. So over to you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Jamie. So today I'm going to start by introducing the 17 SDGs, then speak a bit about the SDGs in the higher education sector, give some examples of what the University of Galway is doing on the SDGs, and then just finish off with a few general observations on how organizations can embed the SDGs. So firstly, by means of introduction, and I'll be relatively brief, the SDGs are an urgent call for action by all countries in a global partnership to end poverty, to protect the planet, to improve lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. So they consist of 17 headline goals that you see on the screen there, and really cover all 3 of the pillars of sustainability. So those being environment, society, and economy. So you can see there, and I think this grid and the wheel have gained quite a bit of attention since the SDGs were first published in 2015. So it is great to see that it very much is entering the public consciousness. And now really it is incumbent on all organizations and indeed all individuals and countries to embed the SDGs into action. The SDGs aren't just these headline 17 goals, but do consist of a range of targets and indicators. So for each of the 17 goals, there's roughly 10 targets and 15 indicators. So just giving one example there, that SDG 17, target 7.1, is that by 2030 to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable and modern energy services. And then under that, there are 2 indicators that then against which we can measure progress. And Tom may talk a bit more about how exactly we visualize and measure that. But I do think it is important that attendees this webinar would look under the hood and appreciate that there is more depth to the SDGs than the headline targets. So then moving to our own sector of higher education, that across the different sectors, there will be different strengths, different challenges, different opportunities for taking action on the SDGs. Of course, for the University of Galway, our sector is higher education, and there will be some overlaps with some of the sectors of the attendees on this call, but I would encourage you to reflect on where your sector can best contribute. So I have quite a few slides now because we do have 17 goals to cover, so I will move through them relatively quickly, but just to reassure you that we will circulate the slides afterwards and we will link to the additional resources. So firstly, just to give a bit of a picture of what each goal includes. So goal number 1 is no poverty. So that is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere, and covers areas like, of course, extreme poverty around the world and the coverage of social protection. So then how does that relate to higher education? Well, of course, there's the fundamental role of higher education in terms of poverty and economy, but then specifically, what is it that universities can do to support this goal? So just some examples here that I've taken from the Times Higher Education ranking, which I'll speak a bit about later, are that universities can put in place supports for students from low-income backgrounds and can put in place other anti-poverty programs and so on. Then what is the University of Galway doing? So just taking a snapshot from our annual sustainability report, which we published this week, you'll find it on universityofgalway.ie/sustainability. So again, this is just a snapshot of our progress. Would encourage you to check out the report for much more detail. As Jamie mentioned, and as you'll see in the next few slides, we are committed to embedding the SDGs right across our teaching, our research, our community partnerships, and our other activities. So you'll hopefully get a flavour for that over the next few minutes. So you just see the photograph, the cover photograph there is of some staff and students who participated in the Simon Community Sleepout. That's actually taking place again this year on the 4th of October, so please keep an eye out for that. But then we also give statistics, for example, the percentage of students coming from disadvantaged areas, the number of publications related to the SDGs. So in this case, 78 publications over 5 years related to SDG 1. We've also put in place scholarships to support those coming from disadvantaged areas. Or one particularly nice initiative is the Glossary Initiative, which was initiated by the University of Galway Students' Union and involves sharing when students move out of student residences, sharing then the things that they may not be in a position to take with them that then can support future students or indeed the community. Again, just trying to promote the circular economy. Moving on then to SDG number 2 is Zero Hunger, which is to end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. So again, reflecting the levels of hunger that still exist in the world today. So how can universities act? Well, tackling food waste, which is a continued issue within universities in Ireland as a whole, combating food insecurity, promoting healthy and affordable food choices, and so on. Specifically what we're doing then at the University of Galway. So you see the photograph here is from a conference that was held on eco-food systems. Similarly, we have our researchers continue to publish widely on this area. We have a master's which recently won an award in agri-food sustainability and technology. And then one particularly interesting initiative was the Student Pantry, which is founded by a student, Adam Mullins, and is now up and running in a new premises in just below the library there beside the Beelin, and that is based on a food cloud system which distributes food for free to students in need. Moving on to SDG 3 is related to health and well-being, again reflecting some specific issues related to health challenges, for example on malaria. How can universities act? Well, it's through collaborations with health institutions, through outreach programs, through sports, through sexual and mental health, and through smoking cessation being some examples. At the University of Galway, we've an incredibly strong teaching and research focus on health and well-being. In terms of our publications, it's by far our strongest SDG. You'll see there almost 2,600 publications over the course of 5 years. There's also major strengths, for example, in areas like biomedical engineering, in biomedical science, in health discovery, in clinical trials, and so on. And but also there'd be quite a lot of facilities, for example, the sport facilities and a park run that was set up in Dangan just in the past year. On SDG 4 relates to quality education, that within the SDG itself, it focuses more on primary and secondary education, particularly in the developing world. But of course, that we in higher education do have a fundamental role here in terms of how we deliver education for our own students on campus, but then also reach out to the community, including adults and lifelong learning. So again, just some of the things we're doing at the University of Galway. We have introduced new lecturers in education for sustainable development and rolled out really a whole range of education programs that you'll see listed there. Moving on to gender equality, and I might just speed up a little bit again, because there are quite a lot of goals to cover. So gender equality, the aim here is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. That how universities can act, of course, is to promote access to education for women and transgender people, to put in place specific schemes to support women in education and generally increase representation of women, including in subjects like engineering and construction, where women are currently underrepresented. That some of the projects at the University of Galway involve the Active Consent project, which you see there being launched by then Minister Simon Harris, as well as then our work on areas like Athena Swan, the work of our EDI office, and many others. SDG 6 is on clean water and sanitation. So clearly a major role to play here for engineers in the construction sector. Unfortunately, much of the world still lacks access to safe drinking water and sanitation and hygiene. What universities can do is, of course, our teaching and research in water and wastewater treatment, in water conservation, water security, and so on. Some of the things that we have done on the University of Galway campus, you'll see there we've installed water fountains, and we're trying to promote not only hydration, but that people would use refillable water bottles rather than buying water in plastic bottles, as well as then we do have quite a lot of researchers, including in civil and environmental engineering related to water and wastewater treatment. On SDG 7, again, a particular SDG of interest to engineering and the construction sector, that there is still a shortage of access to electricity, and the electricity, of course, that is generated, particularly in the heating and transport sectors, tends to come from unsustainable sources. So how universities can act is through retrofitting their own buildings, but also then through contributing to research on energy efficient technologies and energy behavior, and on new buildings and retrofitting current buildings, of course, a major role for the Construct Innovate Centre there. On other areas that the University of Galway is contributing here, we have won several awards, including for the retrofit of the Ors de Brún project, of the Ors de Brún building. There are many research projects ongoing, including the one that you see pictured there with a marine turbine, and then also with projects across the social and technical sciences. SDG 8 relates to decent work and economic growth. So that is sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. So that how universities can contribute there are paying a living wage, ensuring labour rights, and negotiating with trade unions and so on. And some of the things that the University of Galway has been working on just in the past year have been projects such as the Message project, working on the research on the digitalization and its impact on work. And you'll see pictured there was the Greater Galway Charter for Sustainable Urbanism. So trying to ensure a sustainable city in Galway for everyone who lives and works in Galway. SDG 9 then relates to industry, infrastructure, and innovation. So that is building resilient infrastructure and promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation. So again, major role here for engineering, construction, and related sectors. So how universities can contribute here are that the type of industries that we are helping to develop should be inclusive and sustainable. The infrastructure, again, that is being built should be resilient. And then particularly the patents and the spin-offs coming from the university should be strongly contributing to this particular SDG. So just a couple of examples from the University of Galway in the past year, that we have opened an ideas lab, which promotes sustainable entrepreneurship. And again, several of the projects that they have run have really focused in on green technology. SDG 10 is on reduced inequalities. So that's within and among countries. So some of the areas that higher education can contribute to are, of course, the wider EDI agenda, and that we can also put in place supports for those from underrepresented groups. So just a couple of examples from the University of Galway over the past year are our work on recognising traveller ethnicity. So there was a Irish Traveller Ethnicity Week. There was also a Nelson Mandela Anti-Racism Week. And really, we do have an incredibly active EDI office under the Vice President for EDI, who've been doing great work in this area. SDG 11 is on making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So again, one of the big ones for the engineering and construction sector. So some of the ways the university can contribute are, so in terms of the cultural dimension of the university, including access to museums and libraries, but also then the operational side of how we run our campus. For example, the commuting, facilitating remote working, promoting affordable housing and sustainable planning and development. So just a couple of things from the University of Galway, our own community university sustainability partnership, how we work with communities, and of course the very many teaching and research activities that relate to areas like engineering, planning, and community engagement. Just picking out one there is the partnership with the Galway International Arts Festival and the University of Galway. And of course, pictured there, you see our partnership with the Mary Robinson Centre based in Ballina, and that we have run conferences in collaboration with the Mary Robinson Centre. SDG 12, which is a particular strength for the University of Galway, is on ensuring sustainable consumption and production patterns. So that's really promoting the circular economy, sustainable procurement, and sustainable supply chain management. So you can see here we've been promoting the Green Labs project, and all labs in the engineering building have been certified as being green, as well as then our work with our procurement and our sustainable public procurement handbook. SDG 13 is on climate action. And so one of the ways universities can act is, of course, making their own campuses carbon neutral, or ideally net zero, and in terms of teaching and researching on areas like low carbon energy and environmental education. So the University of Galway has made a commitment to move ambitiously towards carbon neutrality. And then there are very many research and teaching projects related then to climate action, biodiversity loss, and so on. Moving swiftly on then, SDG 14 is on life below water, so particularly on aquatic ecosystems and fishing. That Galway and the university is, of course, surrounded by water, and there are very active research groups related to water, both from the science side and engineering side, many of which are affiliated to the Ryan Institute, but also then the economic impact. So for example, SEMRU, the Socioeconomic Research Unit on the marine. SDG 15 then is life above land. So this is particularly related to biodiversity and conservation, and then how we interact with nature. So at the University of Galway, we've developed a biodiversity trail, also a new SDG trail. And then we collaborate with different organizations and communities on restoring biodiversity and generally related to life on land, including a new organic garden, which is just behind the Art Science building. The second last SDG then relates to peace, justice, and strong institutions. So some areas that universities can act relate to human rights, stakeholder engagement, and academic freedom. And then specifically the University of Galway, we have invested in the establishment of a new sustainability office, which I lead, and then has collaborated with others, in particular in the area of human rights, given that we do host the Irish Centre for Human Rights at the university. And then finally is the SDG number 17, which is on partnerships for the goals, and really centers on how we collaborate and how we fund and resource the implementation of the SDGs. So this, and I'll just round off on this one, the University of Galway is strongly collaborative. We have a Community University Sustainability Partnership, CUSP, is our main steering group for our work on sustainability. We partner with other universities, particularly through the SDG Champions program. So second last slide is just on how do we bring all of this together at the University of Galway. So Jamie mentioned our commitment. So our then president, Kieran O'Hogarty, signed the SDG Accord, which you'll see there. And then we embedded the SDGs into the university strategy and really making that commitment to the SDGs and everything that we do. We then track our progress in a whole range of different metrics and reporting schemes. Perhaps the most relevant for this call is the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, where we submit data across a range of the SDGs, and then we're ranked accordingly. So we're very proud to be ranked the #1 university in Ireland and number 47 in the world for our commitment to the SDGs. And you just see the logos there that our scores for our top 4 SDGs were SDG 17 on partnerships, 12 is sustainable consumption and production, 11 is industry, innovation and infrastructure, and 3 is good health and well-being. So they're 4 of our strongest SDGs according to that particular metric. But this isn't just all about metrics and reports. We're really trying to engage the campus community. So we've developed a SDG trail led by my colleague Michelle O'Dowd-Lohan, but with contributions from right across the campus. So I would encourage you to explore our campus, to scan the QR codes, to see how we've embedded the SDGs in teaching and research in different facilities and partnerships. And then finally, just to mention, we were designated an SDG champion by the Government of Ireland, and we've now graduated into becoming an SDG ambassador. So that's where we're recognised by the government, and we try to lead by example and mentor others on the SDGs. So then very finally, and apologies if I've run a little bit over, I just want to give some general observations or recommendations on what organisations generally can do on the SDGs. So while I spoke about the higher education sector and the University of Galway, across the SDGs, there would be different areas in which the different sectors or different organizations can best contribute. So I would first of all recommend that you and your colleagues reflect on what is the main role of your organization and pick out where you can best contribute. Then engage up and down. By that, I mean engage within your organization, so both bottom up in terms of what do people on the ground and your own customers think, but also down in terms of trying to get that senior management buy-in. Also then up and down in terms of your own supply chain, that particularly when we start to talk about scope 3 emissions and carbon footprinting, which I note is on Jamie's agenda for other webinars, that it is particularly important that we work together to reduce the carbon footprint of the supply chain. Then I would recommend that you embed this in strategy, that this shouldn't be a nice to have, but this should really be in your strategy and your financial plan for your organization. You should measure progress, that of course what gets measured gets done. That I showed you some of our metrics and our ranking schemes that would encourage you to develop your own KPIs, maybe inspired by tools like Tom's or by the indicators under each of the SDGs, and then to seek certifications or to report what you're doing, really to be as transparent and engaging, and that you will get hopefully some kudos for that. And then finally, to collaborate and communicate, that none of us are working in a silo here, that we have a lot to learn from each other. And the whole spirit of the SDGs is that this is a global plan and that these are global challenges and will only be solved in partnership. So thank you very much. And sorry, finally, that this is SDG Week, that there are events at the University of Galway, some of which are online. So please do check out universityofgalway.ie/sustainability, and that's where you'll find our annual sustainability report with lots more information on each of the SDGs. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. That's a great run through to the Sustainable Development Goals for, I suppose, anyone that wasn't aware of them, or even those of us that are aware of them, to be more aware of what they're about. And I suppose the point making that you need to look under the hood as well, not just what the top line goal is, but look at the targets. And one that always jumps out to me, for, I say, a civil engineer, would be SDG 3, which is ensure healthy lives and promote health and well-being for all. So we might think, oh, healthy lives, active travel, that's going to help us because it makes people more active and their healthy lives. But actually, if you look at one of the targets in there, SDG 3.6 is around reducing the number of global deaths and accidents from road traffic, deaths and injuries from road traffic accidents by a half in there. So we should look under the hood and then we'll understand more. And then just to reiterate that it is SDG Week this week in Ireland, and it's SDG Week across Europe for the next couple of weeks in there. So it is a great opportunity for you to promote your work and show how it aligns and supports sustainable development goals in there, and a way to get your, I suppose, the work of your organization highlighted. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Brett. So Brett Chrystal, who's the head of sustainable design within DRES, and he's going to talk about the SDGs as a driver for DRES's sustainability strategy. So over to you, Brett.
I would say University of Galway is certainly to be commended on their implementation of the UN Sustainability Goals so far. I think the scope and all-encompassing nature of the University of Galway and universities in general allows a number of pretty much all of the goals to be implemented and actioned within the institution. I think the challenge for other organizations who are maybe more singular in purpose is to identify which of the sustainability goals are able to be actioned and implemented within their own companies. Certain of them wouldn't be able to be actioned just purely because of the field in which the company finds itself. And I think that each of the companies is required to kind of investigate in a more deeper sense which of those goals they can focus on and spend more energy on those, while being mindful of the ones that they cannot be involved in, but certainly still support. So DRES Properties is one of the larger privately owned housing developers in Ireland. We are one of the few GRESB accredited organizations in the sector, in the construction sector. And we are actively trying to implement as many of the UN sustainability goals as we can. From our perspective, these form an integral part of our GRES policy as well as our ESG policy. And we constantly review these on an annual basis as part of our GRES submissions. Although we support the principles and intentions of all 17, as I mentioned, there are some that we have very limited contribution to, and these would be no poverty, the first of the SDGs. 2 is the zero hunger. 14, life below water, and 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And just purely because we don't have a direct relationship with these and a way of implementing from our side actionable items into these. However, we are exploring how we could, for instance, get involved in zero hunger initiatives in our local communities. If we start on the ones that we are able to implement, that would be number 3, which is the good health and well-being, creating healthy environments within our developments, good ventilation, focusing on air tightness, good daylight, thermal comfort. And to this end, we constantly looking at ways in which we can implement this across a number of health metrics, which are set up by the RIAI, and those would be the daylighting, overheating, CO2 levels, VOCs, formaldehyde, and radon. We use Tanakili, one of our developments, as a case study to basically carry out thermal modeling and building energy modeling, as well as post-consumer surveys to find out what people felt about being in the buildings, and basically responding to that to see whether we could improve in developments going forward. If we look at number 4, quality education, although we're not directly involved like the University of Galway, obviously, in providing education, our developments are generally located, as are most other in the construction sector, in the vicinity of schools and community centres and creches, and quite often we are required to supply these. In Tanakili, we have provided a creche for the community centre, and in Newtown Mount Kennedy, where we've got our development called Altidore Gardens, we are actively building a creche and community centre, 2 separate buildings, which you see in the top right corner of the slide. Bottom left is the actual town itself, which already has a number of community centres, already has 3 schools in the area, and we are providing 480 homes in this area who will have access to this. The creche and the community centre are also adding to the education, just with preschool care and after-school care in the creche in itself. And in the community centres, we're going to be negotiating with council with regards to an adult learning component. With regards to 5 and 10, we've kind of put these together just because they, from our perspective in the company, they speak to one another. The one is gender equality, where we have equal opportunity employment within the company. We don't distinguish necessarily between whether a role could be fulfilled by a male or female candidate. We have site engineers, QSs, clerks of works, etc., who are all women on site as well. And we also have representation in our senior management as well. And then in terms of the actual breakdown of our male-female ratio is 26% female and 74% male. There obviously is a discrepancy between the two, being in a fairly male-dominated sector, but we've made great strides in changing that ratio from about 15% about 2 years ago to 26% female now. In terms of reduced inequalities, we try to foster social equality regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic background. If you look at the age breakdowns, fairly well represented across the age spectrum, from all the way from sort of 25-year-old upwards to 55-year-old. Nationality-wise, we represent 11 different nationalities, and in fact, we hired somebody last week from Kenya, which will now make that 12. So out of a complement of full-time staff of 75 people, that's a fairly high proportion of people from different countries, age groups, and gender. With regards to clean water and sanitation, that's obviously at the forefront of many of the construction sector, and obviously very pertinent to the developments that we do. Ishka Aaron obviously is critical to providing that infrastructure, and so are we as the developers, assisting with pump stations and rising mains to enable water to be transported to and from sites, clean water supply to the residents within the communities, stormwater attenuation across the sites, and then using sites principles. So effectively ensuring that we try and minimize as much as possible containerization underneath the ground with embedded plastics, etc., and rather using natural scientific-based methods of suds and swales and surface water attenuation. The examples that you see over here on the bottom left is Newtown Mount Kennedy again, Altidore Gardens. You'll see the big attenuation dam on the bottom left-hand side. We don't treat it purely as a reservoir. It's actually part of a walk, which you can now walk all the way along the edge of it. It will be planted up for the most part. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is typically what it would look like during the year, and then only in periods of heavy stormwater and rain would it actually fill up. And just top right is sort of SUDS principles in terms of using swales and vegetation and slope ground to basically divert water as opposed to piping it. affordable and clean energy. We have a set of principles: generate, store, optimize, charge, which we use across our sites. We have investigated various options of microgrids within our developments, and we actually have them wired to be able to share power with one another once enough people are actually on solar and battery backup. This is a partnership that we have undertaken with Pinergy called Positive Living. And our houses are powered with 100% renewable energy via the Pinergy energy supply. And this is something that we've started at Tenakili as a flagship model, and we're now continuing that at Newtown Mount Kennedy, our next largest development as well. In terms of SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, we obviously try to sustain safe environment, high standards of construction and employee satisfaction within the company itself, and obviously always looking at new markets to provide economic growth and sustain the people that are already within the company. We have a series of initiatives that we do, which is a commitment to people. You'll just see a diagram that I've taken out one of our workshops, which just gives you an idea of how we do it in terms of team culture and transparency across all the departments, a good work-life balance and healthy living, employee training and career progression, communication, the right information at the right time, continuity of site teams across projects through the retention of staff, and employee feedback and implementing change. And this is a constant feedback system which we utilize, and on a yearly basis we reassess this to see where we can improve. If we look at 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, we have some partnerships with Construct Innovate. We've done some research with UCD, and I've also been speaking to Enterprise Ireland with regards to partnerships with reducing embodied carbon and operational energy, and also to investigate new materials and systems within our buildings, which we're constantly evaluating. Within our company, we have an innovation team, which I head up, which involves both developers, planners, QSs, and architects. And we are in a constant drive to find new technologies which can innovate within our industry. CLT being one of them, cross-laminated timber and engineered timber. We're about to go into construction of a Christian community centre made fully of CLT and glulam. 10 we covered earlier on. 11, sustainable cities and communities. We're very much into placemaking, which you'll see on the top right there. There's a wheel there of sort of sociability, access and linkages to the site itself, comfort of the actual product that we sell, uses and activities within the site. At Newtown Mount Kennedy, I use this as an example, as this is going to become our flagship. We've created an entire linear park across the site, which is almost a 2-kilometer path that runs through it. At our Tenakili development, bottom left, we put in hot defibrillators in a partnership with a local organization there. In terms of the community, we sponsor the Greystones under 15 GAA team, and then on the right hand side just some sort of more touchy-feely kind of stuff in terms of actually creating pathways within the development where people can actually engage in nature, and we will be doing wayfinding and signage to assist in this regard. 12, the responsible consumption and production. This is obviously core to our business. Very much a focus on the circular economy in terms of waste production, reuse, sustainable procurement, material EPDs, and going forward HBI certification with the Green Building Council. On the right hand side was the Tenakili development, which we used as our case study, and that was basically the breakdown of the materials that we had in terms of our embodied carbon. You'll see the majority of it is in our horizontal structure, beams, floors and roof, as well as the vertical structure and facade, and we're on a constant drive to try and get as much embodied carbon reduction in those materials as possible. 13, climate action. Obviously, this is also core to the construction sector, and there's an ongoing innovation and research within our company, climate mitigation measures, new materials, focus on embodied carbon, the global warming potential of the materials and the buildings that we deliver, the operational energy of the end user homes that we deliver, and obviously water usage across the site. We have a system of, again, assessment metrics of buildability, livability, and user experience. And on the right-hand side, just a number of different construction systems that we are engaged with to try and get as much of a climate mitigation strategy in place from a practical perspective. 14 we dealt with earlier on. It's one of the ones that's under the sea, which we don't really deal with. Life on land is very critical to us. Biodiversity has now become a critical element of large-scale residential developments, in particular in terms of planning submissions. We're dealing with Kildare County Council, DCC, Dublin City Council, and there's a huge focus on biodiversity, setting biodiversity benchmarks, and then also assessing what is biodiversity net gain, getting involved with ecologists, environmentalists, arboricultural impacts, landscaping, and enhancing the national ecosystems. We have partnerships at the moment with Birdwatch Ireland, which we're trying to put into place in Newtown, Mount Kennedy. We're obviously part of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, and examples that you're seeing on the screen are not just wishful thinking. We actually have badges and the various measures on site in our Newtown, Mount Kennedy. On the right, where you see the flowers in the image over there, that is actually the site of the attenuation dam, which we've planted up. So it's not just a reservoir, it is actually a walkable living wall that runs along the edge of the dam. And then the final one, the partnership for the goals. This is something that we have engaged again with the University of Galway. We have entered into the Work Ready graduate program, and one of the candidates started with us from Kenya last week. He'll be with us for a year while he undertakes a course in construction innovation at the University of Galway. And through these kinds of mechanisms and these partnerships, we can improve access to technology and knowledge and foster innovation. I think from my side, that's about it, Jamie.
Brilliant. Thanks, William. Brett, that's fantastic. Okay, so without further ado, we'll move on to our last presenter. Last but no means least, Tom. So Tom Lindsay is the SDG specialist with ACT, and he's going to talk about accelerating action for the SDGs. Over to you, Tom.
Great, thanks, Jamie, and appreciate the invite, and hello to everyone. So, as Jamie said, my name is Tom Lindsay. I'm co-founder and director of ACT, but also Accelerating Action, which I'm going to focus on today, because considering it's all about the SDGs. However, before I do that, I should explain ACT. So ACT is a social enterprise I set up with two other co-founders, short for Accelerating Change Together. We're a social enterprise based here in Ballina in County Mayo. And what ACT is a group of architects, urban designers, and policy specialists. We're mission driven, so we work like many other businesses, but the unique thing is that we are, from day one, built around this mission of accelerating the green transition across the island of Ireland, as you can see there. And what that means is through a lot of our services, all of our services actually, from impact architecture to resilient urbanism, to future visions and strategies, it's about delivering impact in line with that mission. And then fourthly, and this is what I'm going to talk more about today, impact at scale. We're a small enough social enterprise. How do we punch above our weight? And the software we developed, which was originally an in-house tool, has now become this standalone product to help others face a challenge that we had, which is we do an awful lot of different work. How do we ourselves, as specialists in the built environment, my background is in sustainable development, but a lot of our work is done by architects and designers. How do we firstly know what our impact is, and in its broadest sense, environmental, social, economic, governance-wise? How do we show that impact to ourselves, first of all, and then to others as well? And thirdly, how do we grow that impact? I think a lot of software is kind of like an accounting software. It's about reporting what you've done rather than also being able to improve that impact. So with that in mind, we created Accelerating Action, which is this software to help you know your impact, share it, and grow your impact as well. And it's we call it sustainability management system. It uses the SDGs as its framework. And it's been over the last couple of years helping everyone from, we have University of Galway on the call today, for example, helping universities and NGOs down to tidy towns and community groups through to national government have adopted it over the last couple of years to help them with their SDG challenges as a country and opportunities as well. And a huge amount and growing amount of county councils as well as businesses. Richard's done a fantastic job of explaining the SDGs. One point on it I would say is, why do we use it? Well, because a lot of the time when we talk about sustainability, we just talk about SDG 13, but actually sustainable development, sustainability is about much more than climate action. So it's a fantastic comprehensive framework. So I would urge all of you in whatever organization you come from to use it as your framework, your lens for what good looks like. And secondly, it's the most commonly used, understood, publicly known framework out there. So in terms of forging partnerships, which is what sustainable development needs, you can't do better than the SDGs, is what I would argue. I'm going to actually jump into an example, a built environment example straight away to just show you a kind of a story of what this software can do. So we're used by MBIDV, which is one of the largest architecture firms in the Netherlands. When they approached us, they were already championing 3 of the SDGs: sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and climate action. Great. What we did simply through we offer free pilots to many organizations interested in using accelerated action, is we took 2 of their flagship projects, so exemplary projects of what MBIDV stood for in theory, and we showed them back to them in the space of about half an hour. Okay, yes, you're meeting these 3 SDGs with your projects, but did you also know you were also hitting 4 other SDGs? And on top of that, because we go to this, Richard mentioned the targets, I'm more focused, and this is what the software helps with, more focused on the target level. So we could show them specifically under each goal which targets they were hitting, because that's the level of impact, that's the level of greater accuracy is what we argue for. So this was great for them because it showed them this missing value that they were already delivering before they actually even go on to improve their impact. To show you an example of this is a generic master plan. But it's an example of what they were doing. Typically, you'll find, go onto any architecture firm or anyone working in built environment, go onto their project page, and they'll talk about output of what they do: the floor area, the function, the budget, location, the year. That's great, but that's really just what. It's not the why. Whereas with the tool, Acceleration Action, we could show them the impact of what they're doing, and then therefore they could show others impact of this master plan in terms of everything from poverty, health and well-being, infrastructure and equality, through to climate and governance. And after all, we're building all these things for the impact, not for the thing itself wholly. It's for actually what this is delivering. So back to Acceleration Action as what it does, because I want to show you other examples more in the Irish context. Effectively, what we're helping users do is take the SDGs, take your policies, actions, plans, whatever they may be, and translate them into the language of the SDGs. This graphic you see here, the SDG wheel, is something that we've created, which maps whatever you assess into the specific targets of each goal. Whether that's Ireland's, so I mentioned that Ireland's government has adopted the software. They used it last year, actually this time last year, to announce the progress on the SDGs of the country to the UN. Whether it's been on their national climate plans, if you've looked through the climate plans the last couple of years, you'll see this same wheel of ours in the plan itself. Whether it's county councils using it on their local plans to also tie it to their national plans. So we've got Mayo County Council, but we've got others from Laois, Offaly, Clare using it for the same thing. Dublin Community Group have been using it in D7, a group of community groups, to actually assess their work. Point of this is that it's really also been able to use it at a local level and by local groups as well. So none of these have had to be specialists in sustainable development to be able to use and assess their work. Through to funding applications, so up in Derry, City and Strabane District Council, they used it successfully to apply for funding for a capital project called Acorn Farm, because they were able to more clearly communicate the impact that they were intending through their capital project. Through joint climate frameworks, so Donegal and Derry and Strabane councils worked collectively. Great thing about the SDGs is it's a cross-jurisdictional framework, so great one to use on your frameworks like this. And then Galway, I encourage anyone to look at the Galway Business School showcase. Maybe we can provide a link to that later, where Galway Business School rather used the results of Accelerating Action to promote all the great work that their staff are doing across the school, across the different departments. That ability to add all your different projects and show the collective impact is really useful about the SDGs and the tool itself. So being able to look into governance, economic, social, and environmental is just one reason why the SDGs are so good, because it paints that comprehensive picture of impact for you. That ability to look at local plans up to regional, national. So policy coherence is always a struggle wherever you are, to be able to say, yes, we're contributing to an international framework, but because we've mapped, or rather our users have mapped lots of different plans and policies at a local, national, and regional levels, you can then explain how you do and don't contribute to different policies and ambitions, even up to European Green Deal level. So, and here are some examples of some of the policies that have been mapped. So you can take your actions and compare them to Ireland's national policies as well. So thank you very much. I hope that was within 10 minutes. Just to say, if anyone is interested and following up, we do offer free pilot studies of and assessments. And yeah, otherwise happy to hand back to Jamie.
Brilliant, Tom, very exciting. Great to see the tool in action and how it can be used in a whole range of applications as well. Okay, so there are three fantastic speakers, fantastic presentations, all the way from Richard going through and introducing the SDGs and how they're driving action within the university. Brett showing how their sustainability strategy within DRES is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, and examples then of how they've done it on the ground, and then Tom showing then how you can actually use Sustainable Development Goals in terms of your planning, your strategy, but also in terms of potentially reporting as well.